All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We're really excited to have you here. Again, if you have not already done so, please check your audio, turn on your video so we can see your beautiful faces, and chat your name, role, school, or network that you're in, and one joy you've had this week, personally or professionally. We'll probably have a couple others jump on as we move along. So quickly, I just want to take some time to introduce the City Forward Collective team that's here with you today. Unfortunately, Jotty Bell is unable to be with us, but Stephanie and I are here. So Stephanie, if you want to jump forward.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Stephanie Manny, the Senior Director of Talent Strategy and Leadership Development. I've been with City Forward Collective since its inception in July, and prior to that, served as the Leadership Development Director at schools that can Milwaukee, and spent the first 20 years of my career in Milwaukee Public Schools in various roles. So I'm excited to have you all here today.
And I'm Melissa Caponegro. I'm the Director of Quality Schools Initiative here at City Forward Collective. Prior to that, I was a school leadership coach with Schools That Can Milwaukee. And before that, I was a principal and teacher in Chicago. So really happy to be here and happy to call Milwaukee my home. A little bit about City Forward Collective. I'm sure many of you have been on some of our calls already as we've been in this new Safer at Home order. But we are an organization that just relaunched last July, and I apologize, I have a dog in the background who's really upset that my daughter's outside playing and he's not. So I apologize for the barking. But our organization is really focused on making sure that every child and every family in Milwaukee has a high quality school and a high quality education. With that, we are focused on 4 pillars of work. We are focused on family and community organizing, community-informed policy, effective and representative talent, and strategic investments in quality schools. Before we get started with our partners here today from Valor, just a couple session norms that I want to talk about. First and foremost, as you just heard my dog barking, we are flexible in this space. We know that you are at home and you have little ones running around or spouses running around, whatever it may be. And so know that we are flexible in this space, and I'm sure you will see Stephanie's husband, Joe. He loves to pop in on sessions. My 5-year-old daughter is usually in a session. So we are flexible in that sense, but we'd still love for your video to be on so that we can see you and have some social interaction. Use the chat as much as possible. If there's something that you agree with or want to hear or questions that you have, please use the chat. Know that you can chat to everyone, or you can select an individual person if you want to follow up with additional questions. Jump in at any time with questions. We ask that you use the chat for that unless we ask for you to unmute. And with that being said, please make sure you're muted unless you are sharing out whole group. I will be sure to mute after I'm finished talking so you don't have to listen to my dog barking. And then we want to make sure we've shared a couple slides in all of our sessions around this bite-size approach. And where we're at, and really thinking about the Marie Kondoit method of keeping it simple for teachers and families and students as we navigate this new normal. The more planning time that you have for yourself, the better. And I know we say that and act like there's additional time in the day when I feel like every single day, all 24 hours are spent doing a million things. But the more time you have to plan out how we're reacting to our current situation, the better. Be laser focused in those plans and make sure that's going back to those bite-sized approaches. Culture is equally as important, which is why you're all here today. There's really going to be a focus on how we have that authentic relation-based school community. And so remember that this is a really important time and that culture is extremely important to have. And as much as possible, remember that the glass is half full, not half empty. The better our mindset is during all of this, the easier it is to get through with a positive approach. With that said, I'm going to pass it over to Stephanie to talk about locus of control.
In each of these sessions, we like to remind everybody, because this is such a challenging time, there are so many things that are outside of our locus of control that can distract us, that can try to gather our attention. And those are spaces where we can get stressed, we can get stuck, and we can freeze. And so we encourage you as you engage in the work today to really think about those things that are within your locus of control as you're planning to build a positive culture in your school, keeping in mind that today's session is really going to be focused on you. Everything about you is within your locus of control. Your attitude, how you show up, the actions that you take are in that space. So as we begin to engage in this work today, while I think the framing is really around building a positive culture in your school, that begins with you as the leader. So as you're listening through that frame of what you can control, what can you do? While we all see that our beliefs and our values are the same, that they've always been as leaders in education, there's a shift in how we carry out those beliefs and values in the virtual space. So be keeping that in your mind as we go through the sessions today. I'm gonna ask everybody to take 1 minute and drop in the chat box below one thing that is within your locus of control, either as you engage in the work in the session today or as you engage in planning for our upcoming school year.
Modeling the mindsets I want to see for my team. Great one. Maintaining a positive attitude. That's that glass half full. How I present myself to my students and staff, my mindset. These are all great. Thank you for sharing. We want to see them continue to come in as you think about your locus of control. Specifically in this session, as Stephanie said, you'll really be focusing on yourself. So it's really important to keep that in mind. So with that said, I think we've done enough talking, and I'm excited to turn it over to our partner from Valor. Taryn is here with us today after many months of stalking the Valor team. We had the opportunity last year to visit Valor and see their amazing circles and see how they've really built this amazing culture. And so they are here with us today to share a little bit about what that looks like, and also to talk about how it connects to our current circumstances. And again, starting with ourself, what are some mindsets and beliefs and values within ourselves that will support to really make sure that we are building relationships within our school? Okay. Again, sorry.
Hey, everybody.
I'm sorry. With that said, I will turn it over to Taryn.
Sorry, Melissa. I jumped in too soon.
No, you're okay. Reese jumped in too soon. That's all. It's all yours now.
It's really nice to be with all of you. I am calling in from Nashville, Tennessee, quite a long distance away from you all, but I'm excited to get to share this virtual space with you guys and tell you a little bit about what we do here at Valor Collegiate Academies in Nashville. I am going to really quickly jump over to the tech and start to share my screen. So give me just 1 second. Okay, everybody should be able to see this first slide. Compass in Schools is the title of this session, but just to give you some background of what that actually means, our comprehensive human development model is called the Compass. We use the compass because of the directional arrows that represent all facets of what it means to be human. So we really believe in holistic, comprehensive development for our students in heart, mind, body, spirit, and balancing all of those things. So that is where this idea of the compass comes from. One of our core beliefs is developing whole children is a part of our responsibility as educators and as school leaders. And so as we dive in, we'll talk a lot more about that 30,000-foot view, like big belief system, and hopefully we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of how that plays out in your specific context and how you guys can start to make this not even a shift, because we're all relationship-based, but start to really enhance your relationships inside of your school and use some of these systems and structures that we're going to talk about to really dive deep on that holistic development. So I'm excited to be here with you guys. Just a little bit about me. Oh, here we go. I am going to be spending the next 90 minutes with you, so I just want you to know a little bit about me. I'm a newlywed. I got married a year and a half ago to actually the high school principal here at Valor, so it's fun. We get to wave at each other in the halls and work together. It's really fun. I am a dog mom of 2, so you can see their cute little cuddly faces down at the bottom. I love being outside. It is my joy, and that is why I'm so glad that I'm in the South and we have beautiful weather right now and the sun is shining. My favorite stay-at-home activities have been to watch our little robin's nest of birds develop into young adult robins and learn how to fly in our backyard. It's been so fun. Playing virtual cards with friends has been really fun, and I got this week to spend a full week with my family in Alabama. And that was just such a treasure to me because I don't get to have that much time with my family very often. So that's just a little bit about me. What brought me to Valor is this whole human development. I have a master's in conflict resolution, and as I was, my background is in small business leadership development. And as I was really coaching these small business leaders in how to lead their teams, what I realized was we really weren't getting at the heart of communication soon enough with our kids. Our kids need to learn about how to do relationships before they become adults in the working environment, or else we have to really do a lot of backtracking and do a lot of relearning and reteaching and reframing. And so that's why I'm here. I believe really deeply in this work. So the next 90 minutes, we are going to just orient you guys to Valor and who we are really quickly. We'll do a very brief overview of us. We will talk about our theory of change, which is really this relationship-based model. We'll go into how we make that work in our environment. So the practicality of really living that out through a commitment-based culture. We'll also talk about compass circles, which I'm sure many of you have heard of restorative circles. There are lots of restorative-based practices. We have developed our own little niche of circle, and we'll talk about that and how we enact that in schools and how we train other folks to do that. And then we will also give you guys an experiential portion of this session where you will actually get to engage in some of the vulnerability that we ask our adults and our students to be doing, with this idea that holistic development is not just for kids, but it is for all of us. And we'll talk about that too. So at the end of this session, what I want you to be able to take away from this session is we are going to build the case for holistic whole child development. And you all are in education because you believe that this is one of the key levers to really making the world a better place. You wouldn't be doing this if you didn't believe that already. So we're just going to dive deeper on that belief. We'll experience the value of vulnerability in your own leadership through that experiential portion. We'll practice key skills through that experiential portion of the call. And then at the end of the call, we'll share some resources with you that you can actually take away and immediately implement with your kids and your students while they are at home. So a little bit about Valor. We are here in Nashville, Tennessee. We are a 6-year-old public charter school. We've got 2 middle schools and 1 high school. Our mission is that we exist to empower our diverse community to live inspired, purposeful lives. We take those 4 highlighted words really seriously, and that has informed our structure of our community. So you can see we've got these 4 pillars at the base of our house. It took us about 2 years to figure out how to really nail down what our pillars of success were going to be and what the things were going to be that were really important to us. You can see that we are, well, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. We have a pillar of top 1% academics. So we really believe that core to our mission is that we are high academic focus, high holistic development focus, and those two don't compete against each other. They actually work hand in hand. So top 1% academics, our flagship school has ranked #1 in composite growth in the state 2 years in a row. Valor is the only school in Tennessee that is top 2% for both growth and achievement. And our scholars are in the top 1% for ACH and growth in Tennessee for 4 years straight. So achievement and growth is really important to us. We think that both of those things are key. And another one of our pillars is that we thrive in a diverse world. So again, our community is a diverse community. We are intentionally diverse in that way. So 56% of our families qualify for free and reduced lunch. 70+ of our elementary schools in this community feed into our school. So we have lots of folks coming in from lots of different areas, and there is no racial majority here at Valor. So one of our key components of our school is that we really want to teach our kids how to speak and communicate across lines of difference, which is why we are intentionally diverse. So the thing that we're going to be really zoning in on today is this powered by Compass anchor. This is our pillar for strong comprehensive human development in our both adults and students. It sets the foundation for everything that we do, and it is a part of our entire school model. So the Valor Compass, you heard me say this before, it is a comprehensive human development model, and it is grounded in what it means to be a human. So aligned actions, big heart, sharp mind, noble purpose, and true north. Those are all the ways that we describe those 5 elements of the compass. If you think about heart, mind, body, spirit, and balancing all of those, that's where we get this idea from. So our theory of change, we'll go into that a little bit. We believe, again, that schools are responsible for developing whole children, body, heart, mind, and spirit. So let's type in the chat box, based on your experience, what are the key drivers that in a school lead to developing the whole child? Vulnerability, safe spaces to express. Thank you, Alfred. Relationships between staff and students and families. Yes, absolutely. Relationship focus that includes the development of a whole child. Yes. Relationships. Yes, you guys, absolutely. Supporting the family. Thanks, Rebecca. You guys are hitting on so much of what we believe. So our theory of change is that schools are responsible for developing the whole children. How we do that, the primary driver for that is the development of whole adults, which means our adults are participating in the same work that our kids are participating in. The development of whole adults and children is dependent on the creation of safe, productive, and affirming communities. So much of what you guys typed in the chat box is pointing to that safe, productive, and affirming part of it. So this idea of we are responsible for developing the whole child, and our theory of change that adults are responsible for this as well, comes from the idea of Dan Siegel. He calls this idea we-ness. And we talk about this a lot. It's this idea of we are responsible for the individual and the community as a whole. So not only do we want to grow an individual child, but the community at large is a part of that development. So we have lots of, here at Valor, and we'll get into this too, here at Valor, we do lots of individual work, but then we bring that into a community engagement where our entire community is then engaged in this vulnerable act of developing. So this we-ness, another way to say this is I am a part of something bigger. So I have a place in the whole community, but I am whole by myself. So I am an individual and whole by myself. The way that we do this here at Valor is we have this compass development. So our curriculum follows the idea of heart, mind, body, spirit development and individual work in those areas, but then we also have a commitment-based culture. So those two combined allow that safe, productive, and affirming environment. So commitment-based culture. Before adults can even begin to think about bringing themselves to work as whole humans and their whole selves, what conditions do you believe would need to be in place for that to start happening? Let's go ahead and again, type in the chat box. Trust, absolutely. Accountable and transparent leadership, I love that. The need to feel safe and trusted. Tamika, thank you. Accepting community that values all opinions, yes. Safety, thanks Edith. I love this one, a culture that allows for people to make mistakes and have enough trust to be real. Carrie, that's great. That's great. People can only grow so much individually. We believe that true growth happens in community. You grow in relationship with others, but communities need to be safe, productive, and affirming before people will show the vulnerability required to truly grow. So the things that you guys are saying are exactly what we have based our entire school model on, is that in order to actually get to this deeper level growth with students and adults, you actually need to have a community that is safe emotionally and relationally for those folks. So what does safe, productive, and known mean to you? People who feel safe know what is expected of them. They know what to expect from others. So there's a level of trust that things are going to be held accountable. They trust the intentions of others and give goodwill, participate in routines and live up to norms in a harmonious manner. They feel safe to explore and connect with others and learn. People who feel productive often want to do their best for themselves. They feel like they have an environment to believe that they can succeed, and they work their hardest. People who feel known feel like they belong. They feel like they can be themselves, like they can fail. Many of the things that you guys put in the chat box, they feel those things when they feel known. So let's go into our breakout rooms. Melissa and Stephanie are gonna help me with the logistics on this. We're gonna take 7 minutes, and I want you guys to use the packet that Melissa sent out. There are some notes that you can take, or you can just jot this down on a piece of paper. I'd love for you guys to think about, if you are to actually reflect on your own community, how productive, safe, and known do your people feel? Think about what that would mean to you all and your current reality. Things have changed for us, obviously, in the past 2 months. So think about your current reality and how people are feeling right now, and do a little bit of self-reflection. Share that self-reflection with your breakout room leaders, and then we'll come back in 7 minutes. So at 1:38, we will come back into the big room.
All right, guys, I'm going to set you out in your breakout rooms. Again, you will have someone leading the discussion in the room so you can focus on the task at hand. There'll be 7 minutes, so a couple minutes to reflect right now. And once you guys are in your rooms, I will pop in there and make sure that I put in the chat box the link that I emailed earlier today with this participant packet, just in case you don't have it on you, you can click right there for the link. So enjoy your time in your breakout sessions.
I would love to hear from a few folks. Let's say if you are a principal in a school, let's have one principal volunteer to share. Do we have any principals in this group?
I'm an assistant principal.
Okay, that works.
When you're saying safe, are you meaning like the adults as far as the staff, or just the parents?
The staff, yep.
Okay. So as far as our staff feeling safe, I think that our staff,
and so that is heightened in this moment of COVID, but it made me reflect more on that's always true in the role as principal, and so how can I do a better and better job of narrowing the scope so that people can see the wins and not just count up all the to-do list items that didn't get done in the day.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you're saying and the thought and the fact that you're focusing on like your locus of control and what you can do to set the stage for that to happen. Someone else want to share their perspective around safety, productive or known?
I know that in our admin team, we've been having a debate about when is it appropriate to just kind of start getting back together in the same physical space. We know that students can't be in the.
Thanks for managing those logistics, Melissa. And I hope you guys had some good reflection, not nearly enough time to get as deep as I'd really want to, but hopefully it got your wheels turning about these core components of safety, productivity, and being known, which we think actually lead to vulnerability being able to happen. So there we go. How do we create safe, productive, and affirming communities? What are the levers that we can pull to actually make this happen in a proactive way, in a way that is not just reactive to the needs and the complaints of folks, but actually like we think that this is an important thing to be proactive about. One of the key terms that we have used and that showed up all in your chat when we talked about this core idea of having a safe environment and a vulnerable environment is this relationship-based community. So if we are safe in our relationships, then there is some safety net to actually move forward in vulnerability. We used to say that we were a relationship-based school, but what we realized was that all schools are relationship-based. Like every organization is based in relationship. It actually just depends on how much intention and how much effort you're putting into those relationships and how proactive you're being about strengthening those relationships. So we actually changed our language to be commitment-based culture. So rather than just saying we're relationship-based and nobody else is, we actually say one way to be proactive about creating that relational safety is to have a commitment-based culture. When we talk about these commitments, we believe that commitments are one of the inputs that you can actually pull to get the outcome of safe, productive, and known. So if we think about commitments, oftentimes some people will frame this in our values. We have school values, we have school beliefs, organizational values. We want to take that a step further and say our commitments are based in our values, but these commitments are relationship agreements that we're all making in our community to confirm what's important to us and to hold us accountable to those values. So here are some of our commitments. These are the Valor commitments. One of them that I'll just pull out is I commit to seeking a diversity of perspective. This comes from the value of we want our kids to really learn how to grow up and thrive in a diverse world. That is a deeply held value of ours that we say we are committing to seeking a diversity of perspective. We can look at some of these other commitments. So I commit to working the compass. When students and adults join our community, they agree to this commitment of holistic development. They say, I am going to commit to working on my heart, body, mind, and spirit, and working to balance all of those things. So bringing all of those ideas into a systematized way of thinking about it, if we think about the values that you all have as as a community, things that you have already stated are important to you, or if you just know internally and maybe you haven't explicitly stated your values, you know that there are certain things that make up your community. Values and beliefs are these core beliefs about how we should be, who we should be as a community. And we believe that those are ways that we should interact with each other. Take that a step further. Commitments explicitly state ways of relating to each other that we all agree to. So we're taking this value and saying we're all going to agree to actually be in relationship in a certain way together. And then you take that one step further, and that's where you get to the accountability piece, and you actually get to live out those commitments. So norms and rituals, you all have these at your school, or else everything would be chaos, right? So you all have norms and rituals that you already have embedded into your school that come from your beliefs and values. And we're just saying, put a commitment in there because it gets everybody on the same page. And these are all relational commitments and routines and norms. So when I say a norm and ritual, I'm not talking about everyone is walking down the hallway in a line. That is a norm that is just like logistics. We're talking relationally. So a lot of times we have this idea of thinking in norms and rituals as like how we make our school function properly and how we make logistics happen. But let's take that into the relational realm and think about what that would mean for us to have norms and rituals around the way that we interact with each other as a community. So systems we repeatedly do together that help to uphold and reinforce those commitments that you create. Couple of examples for us. We believe all things can be done with kindness. That is one of our deeply held beliefs and values. So a few commitments for us that have come out of that deep belief. We commit to speaking to the person, not about the person. That comes out of this belief of kindness. We commit to speaking from our heads, speaking from our heart, but using our heads. So balancing what we feel and how we say that in a way that others can hear. The norms and rituals that come out of that for us, and you all would have your own, but we have a protocol for doing relationship work inside of our community, a protocol for connect and correct, a protocol for recommitting to these community commitments that we have. So those are our norms and rituals. And I'll skip over this one just to be better on time. Effective commitments are a set of agreements on how we will be in our relationships in order for our community to thrive. These are aspirational and challenge us to bring our best selves to how we work together. Aspirationally describe what this would look like at the highest levels, so our best selves working together, knowing that every individual will have to make a conscious effort to live out these agreements. Concisely written so that they're easy for all to reference, and consistent between students and adults so that you can operate as one full cohesive community. So some misconceptions about commitments are a set of goals or like achievement oriented. So I will achieve 80% mastery would be an example of this, or we are committed to closing the opportunity gap in our school. These are not necessarily relationship-based commitments. They may be goals that you have for your school, but in this context, we're just talking about community relationship. Commitments are generally not character traits or habits. So I commit to showing grit, or a habit that you would have, but actually they can be inspired by those habits. So it would involve another person needing to be affected by that commitment.
Karen, can I ask a question? So how have you guys kept this whole idea of those relationships and those commitments at the forefront of the work that you're doing, specifically like in this virtual space, in this virtual environment, where we can't have that kind of physical contact that deepens those relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all of our virtual environments have been undergirded by our commitments. So seeking a diversity of perspective is still a commitment in the virtual environment. So when we're hosting conversation, we are still bringing in diverse perspectives, and we still have our circle protocol, and we're still hosting those similar kinds of conversations. If you think about a behavior matrix using these kinds of commitments, we are still using those commitments for our behaviors on Zoom calls and how we are saying that we're going to behave together. Does that make sense? Great.
Sorry, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have specific questions? I know I'm talking a lot at you. We are going to get to the experiential component of this. If you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat and I'll grab it. So one of the key concepts with actually creating your own commitments, and we're going to practice this a little bit, is that distress is testimony. So if you think about complaints that you're hearing from your school community, whether that's from families or staff or even from students in your schools, those complaints are actually illuminating a value that those folks hold. So any complaint could actually be flipped to a commitment if you can get to that deeper value that is being shown in that complaint. So an example would be, I slept so terribly last night, which I actually did. So this works pretty well for me right now. A value there is being alert, prepared, and my best self every day. I value being able to show up with my best self. So my commitment would then be, I'm committed to my health and being my best to start each day. So you have this little kind of scope of how you get to a deeper commitment. If you reflect on your self-assessment, so we spent some time actually looking at safe, productive, and known in our communities. Think about that self-assessment and where are the gaps that you see, where are the complaints that you might hear from your community, and let's start to flip those into a commitment. So let's go into our breakout rooms. We're gonna have another timer on the clock, do some self-assessment, and then come back and share.
We are, Taryn, we're gonna flip it a little bit just because Al said he hates being pulled out of those breakout rooms. No, just Al, it's not your fault. We're a smaller group, so I think we can do this whole group and we'll stay in this space and give you guys a couple minutes to reflect, like really think back to what you were thinking of when you were thinking of safe, known, and productive, and some of those complaints coming up and where are the gaps to make commitments. We'll take about 2 minutes to reflect and then share out whole group, and I'll play some music to help that along.
Thanks, Melissa.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, are we ready for some share outs? Who is brave enough to share the complaint that they had turned into a commitment? I know Stephanie in the last session was offering up some free vacation, so maybe, you know, first one to volunteer, she will extend that offer again. You know, just throwing it out there.
So I have one. We had in the process of well, we have it now. It's happening now, but before, the complaint was our community school coordinators were not in the same space with our principal cohorts for community schools. So when thinking about that complaint, the commitment would be like, we are committed to having a collaborative occur or opportunity for community school coordinators and community school principals working together to problem solve. So that would be our commitment, having our principals and coordinators work together and collaborate on implementing the model in our schools.
So the value there would be collaboration. Am I hearing that correct? I love that. Anybody else? Great job, Christopher.
Terry, and I have one that I feel like, okay, it applies to myself, but I also feel like I've been hearing it on every call. This idea in this space of like feeling overworked and not being able to find balance between work and life. And I think within our organization, like there's this underlying value about collaboration. So I think the commitment that has to be made is to like our personal health, but then also kind of being more effective at leaning into the team during times when you need support.
So how would you sum that up in a one-word blurb?
I don't know if I have one word.
I'm sorry, not one word, one sentence. Sorry.
One sentence. So I think I would commit to taking care of like self and leaning into my team for support.
Love that. Nicely done, Stephanie. All right, let's go ahead and move on for the sake of time. I hope that gave you an idea of how you could start to create your own community commitments. Couple of guiding principles. You'll want to keep commitments, again, short and able to be memorized by your entire community and able to fit for your entire community. You want them to be adaptable for your entire community, so that then that is actually what undergirds your whole community's interactions with each other and relationships. So those are a couple of guiding principles. Now let's talk about how we actually live that out. So if we have these commitments, how do we actually get to a place where they are moving and flowing in an active part of our community? So if you think about where you are right now, you just examined your complaints. Once you examine those complaints and examine kind of holistically, what are some of the things that come to the surface for you guys, that then exposes your values and beliefs like we talked about. So then you agree to commitments that are undergirded by those values and beliefs and create accountability through rituals and norms. And if we go back to this idea of safe, productive, and known, which is an outcome of having a commitment-based culture, then we can take that into what we call a circle. That is our community kind of foundation of how we actually do this vulnerability work and how we actually kind of engage in deeper, meaningful development. So once we've got all of that kind of in our community, we are safe, we're stable, we're productive, we're known, then we can talk more about circle. And again, another way that we framed this was the we, that Dan Siegel weird word that he coined, we and me. So we've got this commitment-based culture and compass development, holistic development individually. So if we think about vulnerability in action, once you do have that safe container, because you have done so much work to create safety and productivity and being known in your community, we then go into compass circles. So this is our experiential component of our model, where we actually take our holistic development curriculum with kids and staff and do that in a community format. So we then share out with our community. When you see circles, you'll see people dropping from their head to their heart. So in a normal day, if you are not intentional about this, most of our day is spent up in our head. Am I right? Like we are moving from one thing to the next, thinking about what needs to be done, kind of communicating around logistics, and somebody passes you in the hall. How are you? I'm good. How are you? That's about what we get in our heart, right? In a normal day. So circle is this opportunity to actually drop from our head down into our heart and say, we are actually going to spend intentional time developing our inner person, our inner self, because we think that that's really important. So once you do drop into your head, from your head into your heart, it leads to, and you do that in a communal space, it leads to this sense of connection. You've got this safety, you're dropping in, and now you're connected to the people around you that are also dropping into their heart with you. We don't believe that connection is a nice to have. Everyone is built for connection. This is a human need. And so along this deep belief that we are charged with developing whole humans, connection is a huge piece of that. It's exactly what you guys said in the chat. To be connected is actually at the base of where we can thrive and flourish and become vulnerable. One of the reasons that people are often moved by our circles is because of the authentic connections that we're all hardwired for. And because we just give the space and have the protocol to make it happen, it's a moving experience to see folks actually do that vulnerable work and actually engage in this deeper development. So when we get that connection, what's hard about connection is it actually requires vulnerability. It's hard to build a relationship if you're not willing to actually be vulnerable. We start to create a community foundation through commitments because you have that safe space in order to create the environment for vulnerability. So one of the key concepts that comes out of that video, you can see on this slide where before it starts, I don't know how to not make it start. There is, I'm sorry, Coach McNeil. He's the main character in this video, and one of the things that he says is circle gives him the opportunity to actually drop in, which is a counter narrative than the one that he was given his entire life as a large Black man. I mean, he talks about this idea that I actually get to be vulnerable and I actually get to change that narrative for myself because of this space that we've created to connect and to become vulnerable with one another. And so the key concept that pulls out of that is that our identity is not fixed. Your kid's identity, your student's identity is not something that's fixed. We actually think that by engaging in this holistic work, what you can do is actually start to renegotiate some of the storylines that maybe you've been given for your entire life, or maybe you've kind of picked up as your identity. So identity is negotiated. This comes out of, and we won't get into the theory, but it comes out of a narrative theory of practice that is undergirded in lots of therapy practices. Our COO is a licensed therapist, and so he has really been the one to shape this work, but it invites one to engage with one's history. One of the examples of this, and I'll just quickly tell you about my story of naivete. So if you were to know me when I was younger, you might have said I was naive. You might have said that I was a little throwing caution to the wind. And I took this story after one of my plots on my storyline was I went couch surfing. If you ever heard of that organization, you can literally surf on people's couches and travel in people's homes. I went camping alone many times. I traveled to Israel at the Gaza Strip, and these were stories that I created in my head of, I must be naive for doing all of these things. I kind of heard that storyline. And after I renegotiated that part of my identity, what I actually realized was, this is actually a story of independence. This is a story of adventure. And so you can start to shift some of those storylines through this work, and your kids will start to shift their storylines. I'm gonna skip over that other part because we're running close on time. So what if we were vulnerable enough to invite others into this process with us? What if we had the safe space to actually negotiate some of our identity, and your students had that safe space to start to engage with their story. It would lead to connection. And we'll dive in a little bit deeper on how we make this happen. So our curriculum is actually called badge work. Again, we navigate our curriculum around these ideas of heart, mind, body, spirit. And so if you were to engage in our curriculum, you would see that we have this phase system, which we think of as a journey, similar to a journey that a Boy Scout troop would have. You journey through each of these stages, every grade level that you go through. So our badge work is grade specific. And inside of each of those grades, you have a project that, like, our kids and our adults are completing projects in each of those grades that are aligned to developing habits of aligned actions, big heart, sharp mind, noble purpose, and having a true north. So each of those 5 areas are where we actually center our curriculum focus. And again, when we think about that badge work curriculum and those individual projects, you think about that in an individual way. That is our individual engagement with our work. And then we move into circle, which is our community engagement. So we've got both the individual reflection and work, and then we bring that into a community environment where we are reaffirming those stories and reaffirming that work that individuals are doing, which is called circle. So circle is the public enactment of our organizational and school culture.
Karen, can I pause you right there for a second? That was a lot. it's
I know.
I want everyone to have a minute to digest because this is a lot of information coming your way about how to build this connectiveness and how to build these relationships. So why don't we take a minute, and if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat box, or just put yourself or unmute yourself and come forward and ask your questions. But let's just take a minute to breathe and digest all that was just shared.
I know it's a lot. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm talking real fast.
Hey, Taryn, when you said about the gym coach, the big black guy that don't normally share his feelings in circle, how did Valor or the curriculum move him into like feeling more vulnerable to like share himself of who he is? Because normally in the Black culture, you know, men don't normally open up themselves and be vulnerable to that nature in circle. So what pre-work was done in order for him to get to that level and to change that mindset?
You know, it's interesting. I can't speak to his particular experience, no, because I wasn't involved in that, but I can speak to kind of a general framework. And we do recognize that this is culturally different for so many people. And so one of the things that we say in this, this circle context is you have the right to pass. If you don't want to share, or you don't feel like sharing, or you're not comfortable with sharing some of yourself, you have the right to pass. You have the right to forego that. And we also believe that we can actually bring people along in that journey. And that is a part of this creating a safe container inside of Circle. So the more safe that someone feels, the more they're going to be able to share vulnerably, right? So I can speak to like a small example of that. One of my coworkers actually has said to us, like, this is totally foreign to me. I'm not used to sharing myself. It's uncomfortable. And so she has reached out and said, I want to do this work. I'm committed to doing this work. So what I want y'all to do is actually ask me questions that will help me get to that place. So in Circle, our team has all committed that every Circle, we're going to ask specific questions to her that will help her feel safe enough to share. And that's just one of the ways that we are tackling that, because it is it is hard. I mean, it's hard. I don't know that that specifically answers your question, Mo. I think it's a question that we also are top of mind with when we develop all of our curriculum, because we realize like we want to be culturally sensitive.
No, it does. And, you know, just being a proponent of Valor too, I just want to speak. I know we're going to talk about like hey, Taryn, I forgot to say hey. Speaking of the badge work too, I think that's a lot of pre-work that is done as well that a lot of people probably on the call don't know about, is that when you really dive into the badge work, it really has you do a reflection of who you are and of yourself, and really getting you to get from your head to your heart and really like realizing like who you are as a person. What are some things that you don't like about yourself? What are some things you can change about yourself? So I think the badge work too does a very good job of the pre-work to put you out there, and then those one-on-one conferences as well to be empowered to even put yourself out there, to be vulnerable with your peers that surround you. So
Thanks, Mo. I appreciate you jumping in.
Taryn, Chris had a question. How are the circles that are done at Valor, are they connected at all to the idea of the circles from restorative practices, or can you speak to that a little?
Yeah, absolutely. They have elements of it, but not fully. So restorative circles tend to be reactive and tend to react to trauma. And we actually take a proactive stance in a lot of, like, we do want to be reactive, and we have protocols for reacting to things that have happened in our community or things that are going on, but actually we use circle as more of a proactive engagement measure. So a lot of our circle protocol is pretty structured. There's a pretty structured protocol for how we engage in circle. And so one of also the differences in restorative circle is that there is kind of like a free-for-all in who can share and who has turns. We actually have a pretty ritualistic circle so that it feels like a really safe environment for everybody. Does that answer your question, Christopher?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up then is like, so where does this work come from, the badge or is this like a work done from some other agency or practice in regards to these, like, what are these circles called? And like, where can we find in the protocol or the rituals that make these circles more proactive rather than reactive?
Yeah, so at the end of all of this, I will share with you guys where you can find all of that information. Our circle protocol is available on the website. We do trainings, so you can see how we structure our circle, but we don't actually propose that everyone take circle and try to implement it into their environment, because there's a lot of nuance to it, and you want to make sure that this is a safe space for students and that people are trained in how to do it. And so you can see the protocol on the website, but we actually do have a training program to where schools can come train with us and learn how to implement circle inside of their context.
Thanks so much, guys, for coming forward and asking your questions. If there's anything else, any other questions as we went through these slides, again, I know it was a lot of information, or even going back to how Taryn was talking about taking complaints to commitments. Anything else coming to mind before we move on to more of the resources and a really awesome takeaway for badge work for families and students as we're thinking about these circumstances and distance learning specifically, we'll end with that. But any other questions before we move forward?
Melissa, I just want to ask one of the questions that was posed in the box around how can circles be truly safe if every participant with relative power and privilege also hasn't like done the learning in the realm of like anti-racism, anti-sexism, etc. So how are you creating that space in the circles to be safe? I think kind of going back to what Mo was asking.
that's a part of why we do a 3-year coaching program with us, because we don't think that this actually is a safe thing to just copy paste into any environment. We do have like baseline measures of trust that need to be available in your school before we actually will agree to bring Circle to your school, because that baseline measure of trust has to be there, because of the exact issues that you're raising. Inside of our coaching program, we talk about how this work is anti-racist, how it actually eliminates positions of power inside of the Circle, and how we work to do that. But that's unfortunately a much deeper conversation and a much deeper training than we can unfortunately do here. But 100% it is a dynamic that we are engaging in and aware of. I love the questions, you guys. We have about 10 minutes left. So this is going to be Melissa, what do you think? Should we go into the experiential part, or should we just talk about the resource that they can take away?
Yeah, I think going into the takeaway resource would be great. And I'm already going to volunteer Taryn to come back and share some more about all of the information that was already shared, and go deeper into what we were going to touch upon in terms of like going through some of this badge work. But I think for right now, going into the resources and really connecting to where we're at in current circumstances and how to support families and students at home would be great.
Great. So we are all in a very, very unique, crazy moment in history where you are likely very concerned about the emotional well-being of your students, and you may not know where to begin with supporting that. So one of the things that we have done is actually create some sample badge work and a facilitation guide that you can give to families at home and caregivers at home, so that your kids can start to actually work on developing their whole selves while they're at home. We're really excited about this because we've wanted to find ways to actually engage families and caregivers in a more robust way with this badge work. And we think that the conversations that can come out of this for families could be really meaningful and impactful in this time. So I'm excited to share it with you. The badge work that we talk about, so this curriculum, we didn't have a chance to actually do it ourselves, but part of this is, again, training facilitation. Usually the badge work facilitation and sharing of the projects happens in a circle context. Because we don't actually think that it's a great idea for folks to take Circle into any context, we have put together a facilitation guide for folks who just want to do the badge work but can't do the full Circle experience. So your students can still engage in these projects, and someone can facilitate the sharing of those projects without having the full-on Circle experience. And we think that this is going to be a really great step in to a more vulnerable, holistic development protocol for your kids and your staff. So if you, this is just some pictures of the badge work. If you go to our website, this badge work is available there. It's a packet of, I believe it's 6 to 8 pieces of badge work, which are these projects that students and families can do individually. And you can download
through it in the chat
those
box as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
On that page, you can download that packet. You will get an email. If you put your email address in, you'll get an email that has both the packet of facilitation guide for teachers if they were going to try to do this in their classroom, and for caregivers and families. So you'll get both of those packets once you go there and download that. What question? I feel like that's a very high-level overview of that packet. So I'd love to hear some questions that you guys have. There are lots of guidelines inside of that packet that you can shoot me questions about, but any initial questions about that resource? Okay. The other thing I will touch on, because this came up a lot, making this long-term commitment-based culture shift. So if this has sparked some interest for you and you think my school actually might be ready to take some of this on, and it's something that we've been thinking a lot about, we have already named it as a priority for us to develop our students in a holistic way. We do have training, and I would love to talk to you about that if you are interested. We have 2 trainings that we offer right now. One is kind of a step in this direction, so it's not the full model adoption. If you are not quite ready to go through a 3-year coaching program with us, we do have a principal cohort that is specific for school leaders and principals to start to actually do this internal work on their own and actually give a safe space for that for principals, because what we know is you guys just don't have a lot of space that feels like you can share vulnerably and actually do some of this work. And so we want to provide that environment in a cohort fashion. And so that is our Compass and Leadership training. I will talk to you more about that if you're interested. And then our full model adoption training. So if you do love this idea of comprehensive human development and you want to learn more, we do have a full model adoption program called Compass Camp. It is a 3-year intensive partnership with us. You have a specific leadership coach that will help you and guide you through the implementation of all of these things that I've so quickly thrown at you today. And I would love to talk to you about it if you're interested. Mo Johnson has been with us as a partner, and we love Mo a lot. So he would love to share with you, I'm sure, but that's it. That's all I got for you guys.
I was trying to say something and realized I was on mute. Thank you, Taryn, so much for coming today and for sharing with all of us. We wish that you were actually here with us in Milwaukee, but obviously we understand that we can't do that right now. But we appreciate you. We appreciate all the resources and support, and we hope that everyone who is here today really found some value. I'm going to launch a quick poll, something different than the survey, so you don't have to go anywhere. It's just a 2-question poll. If you wouldn't mind filling it out so that we know whether or not you found that this session was helpful. If you'd like to hear more about that comprehensive human development work from Valor, it would really be great. So I'm going to put that on up. It's anonymous, so we don't know who's filling it out. I just see the percentages. So if you could please do that. All right. Thank you, everybody. We will continue to keep you updated as we host virtual convenings. And again, just remember that on this journey, you are where you are supposed to be. I know we're all in different spaces. We're all learning things along the way. And so just know that you're where you're supposed to be, and we will continue to figure it out together. Again, thanks for being with us, and a huge thank you to Taryn for sharing all of this information. We look forward to seeing everyone soon, and we will be here if you have any questions. Have a great day.